Very good evening, everyone. I had read this quote long time back, and it has been on my mind since then. Don't tell me how educated you are, tell me how much you have traveled. Well, in a beautiful sense, that sums up the significance of travel and tourism in all our lives. Not to mention, this is a sector that contributes close to 10% of the GDP and more than 8% employment in the country. However, in our living memory, this is probably for the first time we have seen the travel and tourism industry suffer such a setback with both the demand and supply sides dried up as we battle against a pandemic. Travel and tourism is probably the first one to be hit by the pandemic, and it'll probably be the last one to revive. So today, even as we celebrate World Tourism Day, we also have to put our thinking caps on so that all stakeholders come together to work on strategies to put this sector back on track again. By unlocking the economic activities, the center and states have already taken care of the supply side. For example, Odisha government, to mark the day, launched its Odisha by Road campaign today, under which it is promoting regional tourism and offering a whole different perspective to travelers willing to explore the unexplored by taking the huge and wonderful road network of the state. In fact, analysts believe India, with its large domestic tourism market, can make a paradigm shift, look to the future with great optimism. To discuss this and more, the Odisha Tourism Department, in association with FICCI, has come up with a special webinar on the future of travel and tourism and strategies to revitalize this industry. And we have a galaxy of panelists drawn from important stakeholder sectors of the industry today with us. This is Diksha Tiwari, extending a very warm welcome to all our esteemed panelists and audience who have joined us live from different parts of the country. Without any further delay, let me now take this opportunity to request Mr. Dilip Shenoy, Secretary General FICCI, to present the welcome address. Of course, not before informing all of you how Mr. Shenoy has been leading FICCI from the front, along with FICCI Presidium, during this unprecedented crisis, adopting to a new normal, remodeling the functioning of FICCI, bringing value to its members, policymakers, both at the center and states and industry at large. It is under his leadership, the FICCI tourism team has worked very passionately and taken a lead during this crisis to support the industry by taking up the cause with various state government. So over to you, sir. I'll request you to present your address.
Thank you, Diksha. A very good evening. I want to begin by hoping that all of you, your families, your colleagues, and their families all are keeping well and safe and will continue to do so. So Mr. Vishal Kumar Dev, Commissioner cum Secretary, Tourism Department and Sports Youth Affairs, Government of Orissa. Mr. Sachin Ramchandra Jadhav, Director and Additional Secretary, Department of Tourism, Government of Orissa. Mr. Deepak Deva, Co-Chairman, FICCI Tourism Committee and Managing Director, SITA, TCI and Distant Frontiers, India. Mr. Dhruv Shringi, Co-Chairman, FICCI Tourism Committee and Chairman, FICCI Travel Technology Committee and Co-Founder and CEO, Yatra Online. Mr. J.K. Mohanty, Co-Chairman, FICCI Tourism Committee, and of course, Chairman, the Hotel and Restaurant Orissa Association of Orissa, and the Chairman and Managing Director of the Swasti Group, Mr. Ashish Kumar, Co-Chairman, FICCI Travel Technology Kumar, and Thought Leader, Ms. Anita Mandirata, Global Advisor and Author, Tourism and Development, and Special Advisor to the Secretary General, UNWTO UK, Mr. Anil Chadda, Chief Operating Officer, ITC Hotels India, other distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, colleagues from industry, and all who are watching us online. Again, good afternoon and welcome to this session on the future of travel and tourism and strategies to revitalize the industry. We are extremely grateful, and I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Shri Vishal Dev, Secretary Tourism, for his vision to bring together a global panel of experts to strategize on the way forward to revive the total travel, hospitality, and tourism industry. I would also like to thank him for giving FICCI the opportunity to be a partner in this initiative, which is a series of initiatives that we have jointly initiated over and during the course of the pandemic. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and thank you for the repeated opportunities to brainstorm and discuss on how we need to survive, revive, and thrive this sector. as mentioned in her opening when she was welcoming everyone, even Orissa has taken a remarkable step today on the occasion of World Tourism Day. And obviously your tagline is India's best kept secret. The state is very rich in heritage, culture, cuisine, ecotourism, wildlife, sustainable tourism, beach tourism, tribal tourism, and much more. You also have a very strong legacy of handicraft and handloom. I think, as everybody knows on this, the pandemic has caused a huge shift for the travel, hospitality, and tourism industry. We need to take this opportunity and adapt to the whole new ecosystem of traveling in a sustainable and responsible way. India's travel and hospitality and tourism industry has contributed significantly, close to 200 billion in 2019, and we had reached the 10th spot globally for its contribution to global industry GDP. The industry also created about 40 million jobs, and its total, this accounts for about 8% of the total employment, according to the WTTC. In fact, on the 16th, when we had an interaction with Mr. Shaktikanta Das, Governor of RBI, he acknowledged that tourism is one of the key pillars of the economy with high employment elasticity, and the challenge is to scale up the tourism market to enhance its contribution to the economic development. It was very clear that the government, the RBI, and everybody is looking at how to ensure that we get back onto our feet very quickly in this sector and allow everyone who is there to actually, not only reopen, but grow in the years to come. And therefore, to each one of the panelists who are, and the distinguished speakers who are here, a very, very warm welcome. Also to Mr. Sachin Jadhav, who is the Director and Additional Secretary. Mr. Deepak Deva always has a very fresh take on all aspects. A very warm welcome to you. Everything is going digital, and therefore Dhruv Singhi, who is the co-chair of the FICCI and the chair of the FICCI Travel and Technology Committee, will, very warm welcome to you. Mr. J.K. Mohanty and Mr. Dev, I would like to say that in all our internal conversations, even if the government is not present, Mr. Mohanty is a very strong advocate for tourism, and especially tourism in Orissa. In fact, in a session with our president, he very strongly advocated that we go and communicate the challenges and the opportunities across the government, which we have been doing. Ashish, thank you again, as usual, for being there. And, we always look forward to your great panel discussions. A very new dimension, having Ms. Anita Mendirata, global advisor and author. You bring a very fresh perspective to this panel. And of course, to Mr. Anil Chadda, a very, very warm welcome. You are one of the leading organizations in this sector. Just yesterday, when we were on the West Coast, actually, in fact, the only common thing between both the states that I'm talking about, both were impacted by a cyclone during the COVID crisis. In fact, they were saying that there is a lot of pent-up demand to travel. In fact, some of the homestays are full; they're completely booked till December. But that's very, very small number. But I think people are now researching on safe destinations to travel on, looking out to drive, and I think it is an opportunity for all of us and the whole community to leverage this opportunity and encourage people to go forward. I'm sure all of you are really working towards enhancing and ensuring that all the safety and health concerns in all aspects of tourism actually far exceed what the minimum requirements of government is. Of course, there's a lot that government could do, but I think primarily we need to be able to see the different roles that the different sectors could play, and therefore having you all on this panel this afternoon is very exciting. And I'm sure the next 1.5 or actually 2 hours will be full of learning for all our viewers, and all the participants will actually go back with ideas of how to, survive in this space, how to open up, how to successfully attract people to be a part of the tourism sector and then grow this sector going forward. So thank you very much once again for joining us this afternoon. And we hope that you all have a safe few years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shenoy, for giving that very warm welcome to all the panelists and setting the tone for this webinar so that our viewers exactly know what they can expect in the next 1.5 and 2 hours. Well, we have amidst us the Secretary Tourism and Sports, Government of Orissa, Shri Vishal Kumar Dev, and IIT and IIM alumnus, Mr. Vishal Dev, has time and again been complimented at various forums for the corporate style in which he and his team functions. A change leader, the innovation he has brought in Odisha tourism and even sports is there for the country to witness. Be it the mega eco-retreat glamping festival, which was launched last year and will be organized in 5 different places this year in sync with the Odisha by Road campaign, or the concept of sports tourism, which was pioneered under his vision, bringing in more tourists through national and international tournaments. He's known for leading change for the better. It'll be an honor to now request him to address this webinar.
Thank you, Diksha and Mr. Shenoy, for those very kind words of introduction. I think you made my job easier by talking a bit about Odisha, something which I was planning to do. Let me first of all convey my best wishes to everyone on the occasion of the World Tourism Day 2020 today. And one had actually never imagined that all of us would be observing or celebrating the World Tourism Day in the midst of a pandemic which has caused unprecedented unimaginable havoc, disruption, and suffering to the mankind. There is no doubt that tourism, travel, and hospitality industry has been the worst sufferer. But the bigger question is, how long will it exactly take for the sector to recover? I mean, that's, I think, what all of us are grappling with. And on this issue, there have been very divergent views. We have the opinion of RBI on one hand, which says that perhaps the tourism sector will see a V-shaped recovery, which means we could, it's a fairly optimistic opinion or assessment. And we've seen Condé Nast Traveler survey saying that 81% of people say that the first thing they want to do once things are getting back to normal is travel. I am one of those. I am again a very avid traveler, and I've been looking desperately forward to traveling again. On the other hand, we have opinions from Glenn Fogel. He recently spoke at the Economic Times Global Business Summit, wherein he said it'll take at least 3 years for the tourism and travel sector to recover. So the reality lies somewhere between these two extremes. A very optimistic one at one hand and a fairly pessimistic one on the other. I would tend to go with the optimistic one for obvious reasons. And there is reason to believe that there's a lot of latent demand. I was just reading a report some time back, a few days back, which spoke of Himachal opening up. And they said that within 2 days of the state opening up, there were about 60,000 people visiting Shimla. So that gives us hope. People wanting to travel gives us hope. I think what would be crucial would be perhaps our ability to generate and inspire confidence among travelers that traveling is safe. I would say that would be the crux of the whole issue. And, all of us are grappling with that $1 million or $1 billion question of what could be the way forward for the travel industry. To my mind, there are 3 things which stand out. The first and the foremost, of course, is, safety, health and safety of the visitors and travelers. The second is that there's no doubt that domestic tourism is going to be the focus, because as things stand, I think another 2 weeks and we would perhaps have the dubious distinction of being the country with the highest number of COVID cases in the world. The rate at which we are increasing, we should be surpassing US maybe in about 2 to 3 weeks time. Not something to be proud of, but then that's how things are. So with that in mind, I think Indians, being allowed to travel outside India, whether we get visas or not, and vice versa, people from abroad wanting to come to India, that will be an issue. So I think it makes it very clear that domestic travel would be the focus, and within domestic travel, looking at the apprehensions that people may have about traveling by air or by train, I think road journeys would be, the way forward. The second would be so within the domestic area of focus, rediscovering the local elements, within the state. I mean, I think we will all gone back to the drawing board trying to figure out how to promote travels within the state. And, we have our tagline saying India's best kept secret. There's a lot to be discovered within Odisha. So we're also trying to encourage Odias to travel within the state. And also, people from neighboring states, we are trying to encourage them also to visit Orissa. The third would be, how exactly do you go about promoting travel within the state or attracting tourists from other states to the state? So I think curated and niche experiences is something which is the need of the hour. Within the state, as I mentioned, we've started work on all these on these three issues which I mentioned, along with a whole lot of other issues as well. On the health and safety aspects, we started about 2 months back. We started work with IHM Bhubaneswar and IITTM, wherein we have tried to sensitize, build capacity, and train all these stakeholders across the travel, tourism, and hospitality sector. So we've worked with taxi and cab drivers. We've worked with employees of hotels and restaurants, sensitizing them, making them aware, building their capacity on how important the health and safety protocols are, and how to follow them. On the issue of rediscovering the local, we have come out with this campaign called Orissa by Road, wherein we've worked out curated itineraries for people who can travel from nearby cities in neighboring states and from within Orissa. So these curated itineraries are fairly detailed. They start with the point of origin, and right till various destinations. They've mapped all the facilities available en route, wayside amenities where people can take a break, they can take a rest, etc. And the focus of our area is one of our USPs of Odisha, which is our eco tour nature camps. So we've got about 47 of such nature camps in some of the most beautiful places that one can imagine. I was in a place called Daringbadi, which is called the Kashmir of Odisha, a couple of months back. And close to that is a place called Mandasaru, which happens to be a biodiversity zone, one of the very few biodiversity zones in the country. An absolutely stunning place. It's like a silent valley, and a place which has to be visited to be believed and experienced. There are many other initiatives which we have worked on over the last 3 to 4 months. So we are coming out with some new and innovative products, houseboats and river cruises. We came out with an expression of interest for starting river cruises in the state, and I'm delighted to share that the response was outstanding. We had 17 agencies which have responded to us saying that they would like to start river cruises in various water bodies of Odisha. Primarily, 3 are the ones that we're focusing on. Chilka Lake, which happens to be the largest brackish water lake in Asia. We're looking at Bhitarkanika mangroves and backwaters, and also the Hirakud Dam. Alongside that, we are also looking at promoting Odia cuisine, an aspect which has been hitherto undiscovered, but it derives from the cooking of Lord Jagannath, the temple of Lord Jagannath. You would have all heard of Chappan Bhog, so that's where it comes from. Very healthy, very traditional. So, and whatever experience that people have had has been very, very encouraging. We had Thomas Zakaria, the owner and chef of Bombay Canteen, who came down to Odisha for a week, was absolutely delighted with what he saw of Odia cuisine, and he's gone back and started Odia food festivals at Bombay Canteen in Mumbai, something which we're very proud of. So promoting Odisha tourism through Odia cuisine is another aspect that we're looking at. I think Diksha spoke about the glamping festival which we did at Konark. So it was modeled on the lines of Run of Kutch, and it was hugely successful, very popular. So we encouraged to start it at 4 new places apart from Konark this year. Of course, maintaining all health and safety protocols. We've also been working on integrated planning and development of our tourism circuits, several of them, including some signature projects, tourism projects in the state. And also, we're working on some projects which go a long way in enhancing the brand value of the state. We had launched this project for makeover of the Puri beach. It's called Niladri Beach now. It is going to be one of the first blue flag beaches in India very shortly. Hopefully the jury is meeting next one. There have been 8 beaches which have been recommended for the certification, and we are quite sure of getting it. So we should be amongst the first blue flag beaches in the country. This morning we had Honorable Chief Minister of Odisha, Sri Naveen Patnaik, announce that the state is open for tourism and that we're looking forward to welcoming tourists to the state once again. And we're confident of giving them a safe, pleasant, and a memorable experience. So this is what we plan. It's a pleasure to see that we have an outstanding panel with us today. Ms. Mehdi Ratha is there. I can see Dhruv, Ranveer is there, and Mr. Ashish Kumar, Mr. Deepak Deva. We're looking forward to getting Mr. Chadda from ITC is there as well. We're looking forward to getting your feedback about what the way forward could be, because that is something which all of us are worried about. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think very well pointed out. Focus on domestic tourism, provide curated and niche experiences, and send out the message loud and clear. Traveling is safe with all guidelines intact. That should be the mantra. Thank you so much. May I now request Chairman FICCI Travel Technology Committee and co-founder and CEO Yatraing, Mr. Dhruv Shringi, to share his thoughts with us before we move towards the panel discussion. Mr. Dhruv leads the company's business initiatives across continents and has successfully led Yatra to its listing on Nasdaq in December 2016, making it only the second Indian e-commerce company to be listed on one of the world's largest stock exchanges. Since a successful launch in January 2006, he has led Yatra to grow from a 3-member organization to a 2,000 plus people-strong organization, thus making Yatra.com the leading travel brand in the country. He's already been listed by Fortune magazine amongst the top 40 CEOs under 40 years in India. He has also been actively involved in building out the internet framework in India and has previously served as a vice chairman of the Internet and Mobile Association of India. Over to you, Mr. Dhruv.
Thank you, Diksha. Thank you for that introduction. I think the key thing now, when someone will look at this maybe 5 years down the road, the testimony would be how one leads their organizations through these difficult times. So whatever's happened in the past is all in the past. It's about the here and now and how we lead ourselves through these turbulent times. In that regard, I want to firstly thank Dilip. Dilip, you've done a fantastic job in leading FICCI through these difficult times. These are completely uncharted waters for all of us. So thank you for your leadership and the FICCI Secretariat for managing things and being there when companies have needed their help. So thank you guys for that. I might end up repeating a few of the things that Vishal had mentioned. Mr. Dev, thank you for your kind words, and also, trying to elaborate on what Orissa and the government is thinking about domestic tourism. In terms of my own 2 cents on this, I'll try and break it down into 3 components. One would be more about a generic overview, talk a bit more about how we see recovery playing out from here on, and then look at what we think the government could do differently, and maybe a couple of feedback points for my peers in the industry. With regards to the tourism industry, we know it's been at the lowest ebb. When the entire scenario began to play out 6 months ago, we all were optimistic, hoping that like SARS, this would remain a contained challenge and not become a global pandemic. Unfortunately, it hasn't played out like that. It's become much more severe than what all of us would have originally hoped for. And it's also evident right now that there is no real end in sight to this, at least in the near term. Recovery will be a prolonged and protracted one. I know the RBI governor, Mr. Dev, mentioned that it would be a V-shaped recovery. I think there are many nuances to that. So while there will be sectors which will have a more short-term recovery cycle, there will be sectors within travel which will have a very extended cycle. The sector that we think will recover the foremost would be domestic tourism. And we've all been talking about how domestic tourism itself will change. It's no longer going to be a case of 4 or 5 key destinations on the domestic front driving the bulk of domestic tourism. I think domestic tourism will become a lot more regionalized as opposed to everyone flocking to Goa or everyone going to the hills for the summer. It'll become a lot more regionalized, and I think that will create its own set of challenges. We will have to work with the various authorities at the more local level, with the local institutions, with the local governments, in terms of promoting those local hidden gems which hitherto have been unknown. So I think it'll be a rediscovery phase for domestic tourism. It's also an opportunity in itself when it comes to domestic tourism. If you look at it over the past few years, more than 20 million Indians have traveled overseas. And these 20 million people represent the higher net worth individuals in the Indian ecosystem. So if we can provide a good opportunity and a good experience for these customers, they will end up driving a large part of the spending which was earlier done on overseas travel within the domestic economy. And I think this is something that the domestic economy really needs. International travel will continue to be limited. Unfortunately, we will have the dubious distinction relatively quickly of being the country with the highest number of COVID cases. So Indians will continue to face a challenge with outbound travel. So domestic India remains the best opportunity. And I think within this, if the hospitality sector can really gear up and provide a great experience to these travelers, there is no reason for them to go internationally. The other thing which one needs to really look at is the other extreme of this, which is the domestic inbound travel. So foreigners coming into India. Till now, a large part of the government's effort and focus has been towards inbound tourism. Inbound has been a strong foreign exchange generator for the Indian government for a number of years. However, it is very evident at this point in time that inbound travel will have a very long recovery cycle. It's not something which this season or even next season is going to be able to contribute in a meaningful fashion. I think for inbound to recover, you will need to have a vaccine in place, and the vaccine would need to have been there for a relatively long period of time, at least a 6 to 12 month kind of period, before people start looking at traveling to destinations like India. So I think for 2021 as well, inbound is going to remain challenged. It's going to be maybe 2022 by the time we start seeing recovery happening on the inbound front. So from that perspective, I think the near-term challenge is about getting the domestic tourist out there to experience India. There is a lot of pent-up demand for sure. There are a lot of tourism-related, travel-related searches which are happening at this point in time. But I think we are literally at that start of the customer acquisition journey from a domestic tourism point of view. We have to really think about how do we go about generating awareness, from there inducing trial, from there getting the customer to acquire, in this case, come and stay with you and then retain. So the life cycle journey is literally at its initial stage when it comes to domestic tourism. Till now, domestic tourism has been largely driven by 4 or 5 key destinations. So Goa has led the way, there is Kerala, and then there is the hills in northern India, right? These have been largely at the forefront of domestic tourism. It's now about seeing how do we expand the purview of domestic tourism from these 3 or 4 key destinations and make it a much more regionalized effort. And for that, I think the state tourism boards need to be a lot more active. It's great to see what Orissa is doing. Maybe the other tourism boards as well can take a leaf out of that. But generating awareness about what is there on the domestic front is the first and foremost thing that needs to be done. I think there is a big lack of awareness around the initiatives. There is also a lack of appreciation of the infrastructure that has been built, I think, over the last 3 to 4 years on domestic tourism. I had the good fortune of driving through Rajasthan at some point last year, and I was very pleasantly surprised by the road infrastructure that now exists. Had I not been there, my perception of the road infrastructure of Rajasthan would have been what it was 5-6 years ago. So I think doing stuff like that, generating awareness around what has been happening over the last few years on improving infrastructure, on the hidden gems which might exist in the local markets is extremely important. It's high time we moved our focus away from just solely relying on inbound into trying to capture the domestic market. I mean, if you look at markets like China, the vast majority of travel is still domestic travel. Obviously, there are millions of Chinese tourists who are traveling overseas, but it pales in comparison to the domestic travel that happens in China. We need to do the same out here, and we need to attract the better quality of consumers, and in terms of spend levels as well for domestic travel. It can't be that anyone who can afford to travel in India prefers to travel internationally. That should not be the way to think about it from a consumer's point of view. The consumer should be made aware of the kind of products that are available in the domestic market and the experiences that can be offered in the domestic market. So I think that's a critical component to look at. International travel and inbound travel in particular will continue to face the challenge for an extended period in time. So it is a one-off opportunity. So if you really look at this pandemic as an opportunity also, while it's a threat, it's also an opportunity for us to rebalancing our spending levels. With regards to the ask from the government, I think the government definitely needs to look at the infrastructure. Government spending has to go up. I think this is a really difficult time where private capital investments are going to remain limited. So I think the government needs to step up its own investments in local infrastructure. Hopefully that spend level in the local infrastructure and that capital spend that the government does will percolate down into the rest of the economy and start generating employment and thereby further consumption. I don't think at this point in time, private capital itself can do that job. So the government really needs to step up its spending efforts. I think that's the first and foremost thing which is there. Then there is generating awareness that we spoke about specifically with regards to tourism and the tourism opportunities. So we would encourage the local tourism authorities of the different states to partner with players to generate awareness about local travel. So those are two key things. And then at a more macro level, again, if there is a possibility, and I know we've shared this thought with both the tourism minister and the commerce minister as well in different forums, which is around providing an incentive, be it a tax break for any domestic travel spend that is incurred, similar to the lines of an LTC, if a grant can be created for a year or two of a tax break of what people spend on domestic travel over 2021 and 2022. So a 2-3 year kind of tax break if one can be generated. So those are a couple of feedback points to the government. Hopefully, we can see some traction play out on that. I know FICCI is trying to reach out to the government at various levels, and Dilip will continue to do so. With regards to just a word for my peers, I know it's a very difficult time, and while we should all be optimistic, I would encourage all of you to look very closely at your own cost structures and try and control your cost as much as possible. This is a time period around cash flow management. This is a time to be frugal. I know we all want to be optimistic, and as entrepreneurs, we are inherently optimistic, right? We are the chief cheerleaders of our organization. But I think this is also a time to be cautious around some of these other things, which are very important if you're going to see through this turbulent time, which, while we think will last for another year and a half, but we remain optimistic that there will be some cure that will happen in the short term, which will provide a boost to the economy and to the tourism sector. So thank you so much. We remain everly optimistic about the fortunes of this industry, and we are all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Dhruv. In fact, I think you've provided a lot of food for thought for the panel now, because it's time for the panel discussion, and we really have an eminent panel of experts with us today. So without any delay, I would now like to introduce to all of you Mr. Ashish Kumar, our moderator, who would be taking this session forward now. Co-chairman, FICCI Travel Technology Committee and thought leader. Mr. Kumar is a visionary and an agent of change in the travel and tourism ecosystem, has been in CXO positions with leading travel companies like ITC, ITH, Reliance, and Sahara Global, to just name a few, in a career which has spanned over 40 years. He's also the co-chairman of FICCI Travel and Technology Committee and a travel subject matter expert with several large global consulting firms. So I will now request him to take this session forward and start the panel discussion. Is Mr. Kumar, can I request Mr. Kumar to
Mute.
Ashish, you're on mute, I think. Yeah.
Sorry. All right. So, thank you so much, Diksha. And as far as, and thank you, Dilip and Vishal Dev and Dhruv for setting the context, which you have pretty much done my job really for setting the context for the panel. We do have a very eminent panel. I would be introducing them one by one as we go along rather than all together. But what is important is I want to just look at the theme for the World Tourism Day 2020, which seems to be resonating very well with the current time. And the theme is tourism and rural development, the unique role tourism plays in providing opportunities outside of big cities, preserving nature heritage, culture all around the world. So somehow the theme seems to be fitting with the times very well. But having said that, let's look at the subject directly of the panel discussion. And the subject is future of travel and tourism and strategies to revitalize the industry. Now, as far as I'm concerned and from where I sit, there are two distinct segments to the topic itself. One is the future of travel and tourism industry. What will it look like? How will the consumer demand look like? How will we adopt to the consumer demand? What will be the distribution? How will it be serviced? What is the future markets going forward? What is the role of technology and digital going from here? And more importantly, of course, the every thing we hear about work from home, work from hometown, etc., etc. So we really need to see the future in a crystal ball manner to say what travel and tourism would look like. And if you come to the second part of the topic, which is strategies to revitalize, we must, of course, in the panel make a distinction between tactics and strategy, because strategies are more deep-rooted. Strategies are maybe systemic or policy changes which we need to bring both in the private sector and perhaps from the government perspective to be able to put things into motion to drive it. And of course, the diverse panel that I have will be, I take it, having a look at the global view, we'll be taking a view at what other countries are doing, we'll be taking a view of what India should be doing, and where do we all fit into what we call ourselves the universe of travel. So without much ado, so each of my panel, as I introduce them, will have 2 or 3 minutes to give their overall view around the future of travel tourism, the strategies, etc. And then I might just intervene here and there to deep dive on a particular subject for clarification while they're doing that. After that, we'll move into some specific questions onto the subjects which our people are having expertise with. So let me just move on to Anita Mehendirata, who's a global advisor and an author. She's tourism development advisor to Secretary General at WNWTO. So Anita, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, and namaskar. To begin, Mr. Vishal Kumar Dev, Commissioner cum Secretary of the Tourism Department, Sports and Youth Services of Government of Orissa. Sir, it is such a pleasure to see you again. And it's incredible to think that the last time we met each other was in your offices a month before the world shut down. And I just think if we knew then what we know now, my goodness me, how different our conversations that we had, thanks very much to my CNN International client in bringing me to you, how different they would have been. to Mr. Dilip Chornoy, Secretary General of FICCI, to all present today, thank you very much for the great pleasure of bringing me back home to India. I'm an Indian daughter, and I carry with me the warmest greetings from the Secretary General of the UNWTO, Mr. Zuro Pololikashvili, who thanks you for celebrating World Tourism Day with such sincerity around the future of tourism. I'm going to use my 180 seconds very carefully because I want to give a global perspective coming from the outside looking in and look at it from three main areas. Firstly, as we've discussed, this is a global healthcare and humanitarian crisis, which has caused an economic and travel and tourism crisis. Within that, the value of travel and tourism and the values of travel and tourism have been exposed because our industry is vital when it comes to supply chains. Our industry is responsible for 80% of SMEs. We are suffering badly in terms of approximately 1 million jobs per day being lost at the height of the pandemic. However, as I say, travel and tourism has become part of the solution and the basis of recovery of the global economy and society as we work through the pandemic and as we go through the life cycles of challenges in creating a vaccine, getting the vaccine certified, rolled out, and then moving into the next normal. Also importantly is what my Secretary General says, is that trust is the new currency. No matter what we do, no matter the protocols, the policies, if people do not trust one another and people do not take seriously our need as travelers to actually absorb and respect the protocols, we will never be able to get the restart of our vital industry the way that we need it to. Because this is for the first time the world has ever faced a global, democratic, agnostic, invisible crisis. And as a result, it's created quite a primal behavior, which is why my second point, which is vital, is we need to manage expectations. I'm currently in quarantine in London. I was in Tbilisi last week in Georgia at the UNWTO Executive Council meetings. I'm grounded for 2 weeks. The value of that travel was exponential. I have been speaking for the last 7 months about our industry, but for the first time in 6 months, I traveled internationally during the pandemic. And it's been fantastic to see the adjustment, because quite honestly, we are a highly, highly emotional industry. Our industry is based on smiles, which are now covered by masks. Our industry is based on the senses, which is now overcome by sterilizer. We need to recognize that as we are giving people the opportunity to safely travel once again, we need to recognize the importance of balancing protocols with emotional promise, and be recognizing that until we get to the next normal of travel and tourism, when we know that we can actually open up more concretely, the recognition of what we are promising versus what we can deliver is vital. And this is why I fundamentally believe India has an edge. Because exactly has already been said by the Honorable Secretary and everyone, you are literally the international leading destination when it comes to domestic tourism, with 1.9 billion domestic trips taken in 2018. What's fascinating is that per capita, India has 14 trips per capita, which is incredible in terms of the amount of traveling that Indians do in their own country. Indeed, we need to disperse. And that's why part of me thinks that Mother Nature must have been a tourism practitioner, because we have been talking about how long have we been speaking about domestic tourism? How long have we been talking about mobilizing and strengthening infrastructure? How long have we been talking about domestic product development? Because we have been grounded and the world has been shut out, this is the perfect opportunity to create the greatest ambassadors of India, being Indians. We need international travel, there's no question. The yield comes from that. And IATA is predicting 100 million journeys are going to be stopped in and out of India this year, costing 3.2 million jobs. It's heartbreaking. But the fact is, we don't have international travel, even with the air bridges and the air bubbles. We don't have it without aviation. That is vital. And until confidence can come back within the aviation sector, we're not going to be able to build international travel inbound. We need to deal with the pandemic. So as I pull this to a close, I just wanted to say that ultimately this is the greatest opportunity for India to really embrace the potential of not just incredible India, but incredible Indians. because that is going to be the source of development of the industry, not just in human capital, but in the potential to really create a destination that is valued and celebrated, that when the international markets have a chance to come back, they can come back. But really, you are blessed as a destination, you are blessed as a country and as a people to already have an exceptional domestic travel infrastructure. Now is the time to inspire Indians to utilize that because they are proud of their home, not because they have nowhere else to go. So with that, I will close off for the moment. But again, loving Dhanyavad for the chance to be with you all. I am very grateful. And I hand back the stage.
Thank you, Anita. And we'll come back to you, of course, for more conversation and move on to Deepak Deva, who always have had very incisive views on the inbound business into India. You talked about domestic, but Deepak has been well known as far as overseas markets are concerned, not only as a co-chairman of FICCI Tourism Committee, but as one of the largest group of inbound companies he personally heads. So Deepak, over to you and for your view.
Thank you, Ashish. Mr. Vishal Dev, thank you for giving FICCI this opportunity to collaborate with the Orissa government. Under your leadership, Orissa is getting great traction, and Orissa tourism will do extremely well in the months and years to come. I also want to thank Dilip Chonai for his leadership at FICCI and his support to tourism. He's very involved with all of us and is involved with this sector. So thank you very much. Also, Dhruv, thank you for your opening remarks. You spoke from your heart, as you always do, and it was very interesting to hear what you said. So, you know, who would have imagined that we would be celebrating World Tourism Day over a computer screen with an industry that we all love, which is now in shambles? But let's look at the positive side. We have a great panel of speakers today who will discuss our strategy to restart Incredible India, if you will. And on behalf of FICCI, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out to join us in this conversation. This is one industry that has traditionally been a huge job creator and probably has the largest small-medium entrepreneurs who have shown the way for Atmanirbhar Bharat, it's a tongue twister for me, long before the Prime Minister actually made it in a focus area for his government. Therefore, it is even more surprising that this industry has received absolutely no relief whatsoever. My hope now is that state governments like Kerala did will come out with specific packages of relief and save the local travel industry. Earlier, Dhruv also did speak about this point. We have to be careful whilst being over-enthusiastic about opening the borders. A stop, start, stop approach will kill the confidence in the international travel to India. UK is experiencing this right now, and it's a mess. People were scrambling to return from Portugal, and if they would have missed that deadline, they would have been in quarantine for 2 weeks and probably lost their job. Anita just mentioned she's in quarantine after returning from overseas. So, you know, we can't have a stop, start, stop approach. That would be something that I'd really like to emphasize here. But before we go further, we need to estimate when will the business return to India. We have spoken to many of our clients and then arrived at this conclusion. Inbound business will not raise an invoice till the end of the year. There will be a trickle of business in January 2021. Then the summer, traditionally off-season, will be very low revenue months. So we expect some normalcy to return by September 2021. I hope I'm wrong, but if this is true, travel companies have a real rough ride ahead. When the business returns, it will definitely return back, it'll come back strong. And if we do the right things now, preservation of cash, Dhruv mentioned, there are lots of other things that we have to get right. On the supply side, we hope that the hotel companies stay strong and don't run into financial problems. We also want, and I'm not only talking of big companies like ITC, Taj, Oberoi's, etc. We also want the heritage hotels to remain in good shape, as they are a very important part of our offering. There is, from my side, I would feel only one demand that we have from the government. Pay us our export earnings of last year. This was money that we earned, we can tide over the dead period. Most companies would be able to tide over this period. It's money earned from the previous year. We are not asking for charity, but it has to be paid now. It will also be interesting to see which nationalities will return. In our opinion, countries like Russia, England, Germany, the Russians, English, the French, Germans will be the first to return to India. That's what we feel, because traditionally these have been the large markets. The next big question that we need to answer is when the business returns, will sustainability be thrown out of the window? We need to ensure that we keep our eye on the ball and don't let that happen, as it will destroy all the hard work done over 20 years. People must return as responsible travelers. And I hope that this disaster has taught all of us to respect what nature has given us. My last point would be about building confidence in the mind of the travelers. Here, the Government of India and the Ministry of Tourism will play a very big role in confidence building measures. In fact, they can make or break it for an industry. The government will need to build a strategy that must address issues like assuring the world on India's healthcare benefits, SOPs, etc., that we have in place, and how these will be communicated to the world to ensure Operation, let's call it Discover India Restart, is successful. Thanks, Ashish. Back to you.
Thank you, Deepak. And I'll, of course, come back to you on what you propose to be, should I call it, Incredible India 2 blueprint for marketing the country just right in these times. But we'll come back to you on that. And I move on to Mr. J.K. Mohanty, who's the co-chairman of FICCI Tourism Committee and chairman managing director of the Swasti Group. And as we just said earlier, almost an ambassador for tourism in Orissa. So over to you, J.K.
Thank you, Ashish. Namaskar to all my panelists and learned people sitting here. I think after listening to Dhruv and Mr. Deepak, a lot of knowledge we are gaining today. But as far as Odisha is concerned, and my views are concerned, domestic tourism is really going to pick up in place of inbound tourism. Indians used to spend around 1,60,000 crores going abroad and spending this money outside because of very good infrastructure created in our neighboring countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and other places. So this 1,60,000 crore rupees will now be spent in India only if we can improve our infrastructure to that level. So I think this is the best time to build a very good tourism infrastructure in India. If we have, for example, Odisha is one state which is looking up, and fortunately, to our advantage, we have a Secretary Tourism who is an IIT, IIM, and IAS. All these three combined together. In this state, he's pushing the industry forward. You know, other states, you know, people run after the government for idea, help, and other things. In this Odisha case, it is just the opposite. We are not able to catch up with him. He's done things in the sports, the glamping festival, and all those things, which are just eye-openers. And he runs. He doesn't stop and makes us run behind him. There's no time that we've ever been able to give an idea to him, because every time we meet him, he comes out with ideas and which we need to follow. That's the advantage of Odisha. And as far as infrastructure is concerned, I will take this platform to inform remind Mr. Vishal Dev. Odisha has the lowest number of star category hotels compared to states like Kerala, Goa, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and other places. So I think this is the best time to give some incentives to the hoteliers, to the for attracting private investment and building a solid infrastructure in the state. When Odisha's government is planning has acquired 1,000 acres of beach land in Samuka, which is going to become a gold mine for tourism, I think one good project like a Disneyland will attract huge number of domestic tourists. We have an advantage of beach We have advantage of mountains, hills, art, craft, culture, cuisine, everything which rest of India has, Odisha has the advantage. I think we must take advantage of this, and with the help of the government, Odisha stands in a very advantageous position as far as domestic tourism is concerned. We are very well connected by air, by train in the domestic market. And what Mr. Deva said, although inbound tourism is going to take time to pick up, but I will give you one example. I have a resort in a rural place in near Chilka Lake. Last weekend, we had about 16 cars, owner-driven cars, who drove down from Calcutta to Chilka Lake and spent a weekend. So this is the type of customers that are coming, and what the Condé Nast Traveler has presented and surveyed, that 81% of the Indians want to move out of their homes, and I think it is a fact. The people staying in the metros like Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Madras, staying in the high-rise buildings, would like to drive down here, would like to come down here and spend time in the rural areas and in the green areas. Odisha has a very low density of tourists. So this is the best state that can be safely used for tourism and by tourists who are wanting to move out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitendra. Appreciate. And if I may request Anil Chadda to come in next, who's the Chief Operating Officer for ITC Hotels. Now, Anil himself has got over 2 decades in ITC and hotels, and we all know what ITC as a hotel group stands for. He's himself a pretty well-rounded personality, both in hospitality and F&B and many other subjects. Also opened many key properties down south of India. So Anil, over to you. How do you see the whole thing?
Thank you, Ashish, and very good evening to all the fellow panelists. Thank you, FICCI, for inviting us to share our thoughts on the revival. First, compliments to Mr. Vishal Dev. I think that opening speech of yours was truly remarkable. You know how you're setting the agenda for Odisha. That was brilliant. Mr. Dilip Shenoy, it's always a pleasure to hear you, sir. So it's wonderful to see you once again. Dhruv, for your very good remarks as to what the future holds for us. So I think a lot which I wanted to say has already been said, to be honest with you. I think we are all on the same page. Everybody's talking about India, everybody's talking about domestic, everybody's talking about foreigners not coming back in a hurry. Everybody's talking about the great opportunities which are prevalent in India. And I'm actually of the same opinion. So the world, if you ask me, this do not disturb tag, probably the new normal has probably just begun about 30 to 45 days back, when we all kind of realized that we have to coexist. There was a phase of containment and there was a phase of fighting it out. But I think with all the indications that it's going to be this black swan event is here to stay for a while. And what is it that you need to do to coexist with it? And that is what the industry is right now grappling with. I think Anita did mention, and I think Mr. Dev also mentioned, I think the most important thing right now is trust. And hotels who are supposed to deliver those moments of truth have to convert them into moments of trust. I think the biggest thing, being a hotelier myself and how we have opened our hotels and restaurants in the last 60 days, the first question everybody is asked is that what have we done? How have we prepared ourselves? And I must say that all the chains in the country have gone back to the drawing board. Everybody has gone back and rewritten the rules. Everybody has come back with variety of stuff which can induce a lot of confidence, and we are actually witnessing that. And somebody did mention that there's a bit of a demand which has started in driving distance holidays, and we are witnessing the same in our company as well. But before we even reached there, just like 26/11, if you all remember, changed the entire dimensions on security, this event is going to change a lot on the hygiene and safety. The sanitization before personalization today is the new luxury code. And people are who used to expect highly personalized service are now looking forward to the redefined service standards, which is really seldom seen, never touched, but always felt. And that's what we are all working towards. So the new normal, to my mind, is going to be built on health, hygiene, and safety, and bringing about that trust. And that's what we worked on. We've worked on. So as a company like ours, we've also come up with a beautiful program called the We Assure. We Assure is nothing but an assurance on every standard. Whether it's on the health front, whether it's on the hygiene front, all the measures that you've taken. And I think all the chains have done that, whether it's contactless service, whether it's contactless check-in, whether it's cleaning of rooms, in a very hygienic manner, whether it is a room service with nobody entering your room. How is it that you're able to provide the same service, without actually physically going near a guest? Because you are wearing a mask today. All the 5-star hotels, all the restaurants that you go to, you feel that, but there is a smile behind that. There's a warm felt namaste behind that, and which is the Indian story, and which will 100% strike back. And I go back to everybody when everybody says that the domestic demand, yes, absolutely, but in domestic demand itself, the tables have really turned. If you remember, when we used to ask everybody walking into the hotel, how are you doing? Today, the guest, before even walking in, wants to know what you have done. They want to be assured of all the safety standards. So safety is probably the key word today. And hygiene, which all of us followed. There was not that the hygiene standards were not up to a certain level, but yes, today it's more important. Safety is today on a show window. It's like a show kitchen. People really want to see what you're doing for safety. When you're checking in, how you're cleaning your baggage, how you're sanitizing the bags, how you are, how you're serving, what is the kind of precautions you've taken in restaurants, how the masks have come in, how the screens have come in, how safe you are. And I must say that a lot of movement has begun, especially for states who have allowed it to begin. If you look at states like Delhi, for example, allowed the restaurants to open about a month back. You can see a lot of footfall back. The famous restaurants are almost back to 50% capacity. Yes, in the rooms are difficult to fill, but again, as the other colleagues also mentioned on the panel, it is really the pent-up demand. You have hotels down north who are actually witnessing 100% occupancy on long weekends. Work from home has changed the weekend. Also, it turns out to be. So there's some very good trends which are available there as well. So you need to keep going back. You need to keep working on your own standards. But it's not just talking. You have to really not just walk the talk. You have to really lead it from the front. As Mr. Dev also mentioned about what Odisha is doing. If you have to really generate demand, it has to be a very, very huge collaborative effort between the states, between the various players in the state. What is it that you can do? I was in Mussoorie just yesterday, and I was so heartening to know that Mussoorie filled up really fast from the time the restrictions have been removed. We are witnessing good trends in our hotel in IDC Grand Bharat. We're witnessing good trends in Jaipur. I hope Goa comes back to where it was. Challenge obviously is going to be for large business hotels. You got some large business hotels in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad. They are in troubled waters. Transient travel is not started. Corporate travel has not begun at all. What you have survived on in the first few months is completely quarantine business. All the hotel chains. It's exactly what happened in China to begin with. But China has come back to 50% occupancy, and as Anita also mentioned, or I think Dhruv mentioned, that they have a lot of in-house demand, and which is available. But what is it that you can do to get people out? And that is what is important. There's a large majority of people who would love to travel. Traveling by road, and India has some fabulous locations from mountains to beaches. It's a country where every 200 kilometers the cuisine changes. There's so much to see. There's so much to enjoy. There's so much to experience. So what is it that you can do to bring them out of their homes? And that is what would take the movement forward to begin with. But it is a bit of a rough ride. Lastly, I think there's a great opportunity for the wedding segment, especially for the luxury hotels. We've lost a lot to the outside world, but this entire reboot can actually take you back. You can rewrite where you lost. You can rewrite the entire program. We have a wealth of experience. we can deliver a lot. So this is the time, and these weddings are going to stay back, and we are already witnessing the demand which is getting generated in some of the locations. So how do we keep them back? Because we lost a lot, but this is the best opportunity to tell India that this is really the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and you need to play a part as well, and we can actually deliver what exactly you're looking for and make India not just incredible, but even more safely incredible. And that's, I thought, was my opening remarks on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil, for articulating that well. And another person who articulates things well through her blogging and being an influencer in some manner has been Lakshmi Sharan. And you want to talk about it, Lakshmi?
Thank you so much. Good evening, Vishal sir. We met last year in Orissa. Mr. Deepak Chani, FICCI, thank you so much for inviting me and making me a part of this panel. In fact, I was on another panel discussion this morning, and I did make, we were talking about destinations, especially in rustic India, and both Mangal Jyoti and Raghurajpur were my case studies when I was speaking about them. But here we are talking about a different topic, and everybody's spoken about domestic tourism and how that has to be the key focus. I don't want to repeat what everybody else said, but I learned a new word today. I believe it's been there for a while, but now everybody's talking about it in the COVID scenario. It's called proximity tourism. Italy has been promoting it in a very big way. Italy, in fact, because they've realized that even though they opened their borders, they've realized that not because it's one of the earliest countries that had a lot of pandemic. So they have started looking at countryside and villages. They even have organizations, which are like the beautiful villages of Italy and a couple of others who are actually going and doing like a kind of an audit and marking villages which are safe. And they're actually promoting with the countryside to Italians. So the idea is that maybe since domestic tourism is something that we are all talking about, proximity tourism or I called it the hyper-local kind of a version of tourism, where you're actually like for Bangalore, I'm from Bangalore, so I think for a Bangalorean like me, Bangalore becomes the tourist destination. And then I'm looking at places around Bangalore. For example, there is the Rose Gardens of Tully, which I've never visited because it's always there. I never really thought, okay, I'll go sometime, but then it's right there. And then there are, of course, Nandi Hills, there are farms, there are fields, there are innumerable lakes in and around Bangalore. And all of these eventually become destinations for the Bangalorean to visit before he or she starts going outside. And if they go outside and they look at their own region, their own backyard, their own state, and then, of course, neighboring states which are open for tourism. So I felt that proximity tourism is something, which would definitely kind of start helping each state. Odisha has already started doing a lot of road trips and trying to promote the destination to Odia and also looking at local cuisine. The other thing that we all spoke about is work from home. And a lot of my friends who are in the IT sector, they work from, they go to they keep posting on Twitter. They keep sharing all about their beautiful views from wildlife lodges and wherever they're working. And it's an opportunity maybe if hotels, which are especially small boutique properties and homestays, talk to corporates and see if there is an opportunity to kind of start working from these properties and from these resorts. So I personally feel that with proximity tourism and with domestic tourism leading from the front in India, there is an opportunity where everybody becomes a stakeholder, which is like a local historian, maybe a local guide, a local writer, a local business, a local tour operator. All of these are local stakeholders. And we've spoke about trust and we spoke about narratives. And I think narratives are very, very important. And me being a writer, blogger, storyteller, I personally feel that people like us would actually be leading in the front to kind of talk about these stories, build these stories, bring in the positive angle, talk about trust, talk about people's stories, because end of the day, COVID is also about humans. I know we're talking about it from an industry point of view, but it is actually, it's a human story. And since we're talking about human stories, I was reading today about British Columbia in Canada. So they have started this whole, they've kind of tied up with an organization, and they're actually creating this whole opportunity for building resilience for small businesses, it could be even a retail company, or it could be a farm, it could be a ranch, it could be all these little tourism products, if I may call them. And there is an organization which is actually helping them navigate through this crisis. So some of them are doing hand-holding, like a one-on-one cases. Some of them are helping them in marketing. Some of them are helping them with finance. Some of them are helping them reinvent themselves. So much so the stories, for example, there was one story that I read about a ranch. And there was another story, which was even more fascinating, which I read about actually a shop that was actually selling authentic sea salt, and how they have reinvented their business, or how they are at least trying to reinvent their business using, they're taking the help of this resilience organization. So maybe, public-private partnerships like this would kind of help. And stories that we are talking about, which is through stories and storytellers like us, the narratives that we have to create, the narratives of people who have been resilient, the narratives of people who can, how we could change your businesses, be powerful storytellers, change makers, innovators, and of course the destination itself, how we can reinvent itself, how can we market, how can I repackage Bangalore for Bangaloreans, how can we create these kind of experiences, how can we create innovative innovative solutions, like somewhere I was reading about this robotics being taken over to help out in hotels, or even in airports these days, to kind of, or the front office is being taken over by them in some hotels. So little things, be it technology, be it human stories, be it trust, be it initiatives, be it stories of resilience. All of this, I think, if they are formed in the form of powerful narratives written by stories and storytellers like us, which is where I believe we could kind of come in, so this is what I wanted to share from my perspective, as to how storytellers and stories can actually help in rebooting tourism, a little part that we can play, if at all, in kind of being a stakeholder in this process.
Thank you, Lakshmi. I heard somebody say that social distancing may be a norm, but not emotional distancing. So therefore, emotionally, you could still connect with your audience, with your customers, with whoever else you would wish to connect to. And I'm sure this discussion has also helped us build an appetite to welcome a master chef, a restaurant himself, a foodie. So may I welcome Chef Ranveer Brar. Ranveer, we'll be very, very curious to listen to what you have to say.
Well, thank you for that, Ashish. And it's a pleasure being here. I think, I've always been a fan of how Mr. Vishal Dev's handled Odisha tourism. It's a pleasure meeting you here. Our MasterChef winner for this season, I judge MasterChef India, and our winner for this season was from Orissa, and the second runner-up was from Orissa. So that speaks about how much pride do Odia people take in their food. I just, after sharing all this, I'm just going to, there's some points that I've written down that I thought would be interesting to put in our thought process going forward. I think what is, in this whole conversation between inbound tourism and why people travel, we always, as Indians, and we were talking about quality of travelers in India, we've always traveled for religion, or we've always traveled for monuments, and that's a bulk of domestic travel used to happen because for religious reasons, or because we wanted the picture next to the Taj Mahal or the Red Fort, or the experiential travel. You didn't really feel an inkling need to just travel, and a lot of us have felt that basic primal need to travel. In the last 6 months, I think that's a big change that's going to sustain and stay in our mindset. The reason to travel that we earlier had as Indian families was very destination oriented, and boxes to check. Till we had enough boxes to check in a place, we would never really travel to that place. Traveling for the sake of traveling is something that we are feeling the need of in larger numbers. And I think that's a really important part that's going to stay. Experiential traveling, the need for it is something that we have felt now that we are boxed in. Now, as a byproduct of that, when you're looking for experiences like food automatically come to the fore. food is the only experience that sort of stirs all senses. Music can stir the ears. Performances can stir the eyes. Food is the only art form experience that can stir all senses, and hence it becomes really, really important to understand what we want to talk about food, how we want to communicate it. And I want to bring it back to the word pride. I think if we take pride in our food, a lot of times, till we take pride in our food, we are not really the torchbearers of our own food. And if I travel to a small town, I'm from Lucknow, and I always say कि हमारे, you go to anybody in Lucknow और उनसे पूछे बिरयानी सबसे अच्छी कहाँ की है, कोई हैदराबाद बोल दे तो मैं मूंछें मुंडवा लूंगा. That is the kind of pride that we've always taken in what our cuisine holds for us. Unfortunately, there is some part that will need to be reworked in the way we look at food. And that is something that for me is a red flag for a lot of us, right from hotels to destinations. We've always put a big exotic banner and a mystic banner on our cuisine and say, oh, there is this mumbo jumbo, our food is cooked for 24 hours and this dal is marinated for 50 hours and this recipe is a very secret recipe. You can't go see the kitchen. The temple kitchen is not accessible. You can't see it. It's a very secret recipe. That mumbo jumbo has to go now. Because if you want to build trust with food, you need to be able to say, hey, you might think we are exotic, but we're actually familiar. For that sense of familiarity, the intimidation and the part where Indian food sort of was very mystic and not understandable has to go. The reason why our haldi doodh became turmeric latte and came back to us and became famous, because we always just said eat haldi because haldi is good for you. It went to the West, they broke it down and said, it fights cancer, it does this, does this, does this. They objectively broke it down, and now suddenly haldi doodh becomes famous as turmeric latte. I think that's what we need to start doing to our food if we really believe that experiential tourism is the way ahead and food is an integral part of tourism. We need to remove the fluff. The world understands that our food is healing, but we need to explain how healing it is, minus the mumbo jumbo. And we'll talk about more definitely, but I think I just want to start there.
Yeah. Thanks, Ranveer. You also do films on food, I'm told. So I'm sure you'll be able to put this across in a couple of films you would do going forward from here.
Absolutely, Ashish.
Right. So Claire Martignier is based in a beautiful place near Geneva. Founded an organization, India and You, and in the 3 years, she told me she's already made 30 trips to India. So she's obviously an India lover. Over to you, Claire.
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you so much for giving me a little voice in this particular day. Yes, I mean, I'm an Indian lover, I can say, India lover. And yeah, I have this experience to be in touch with India almost every day now. I live between the two cultures, and it will be maybe a little bit surprising to hear me for you, but I feel very much confident for the future, although of course I cannot predict anything. But of course this COVID situation is teaching us about something which is maybe related to our humanity, to truth, to sincerity, authenticity, and not only tourism, actually. All the sectors are badly now, we can say, affected. But I think we can go ahead with this confidence in ourselves that if we are connected to what we are in the deep as human beings, we can change the things, we can change the world, we can be more collaborative, and even in tourism. And I'm sure that being also on the ground here, based in Switzerland, I am in touch with the Swiss people. I would like, I mean, every day I'm trying to share about your culture, about pointing out our differences, but also all the things that we have in common. And for me, it is about that. I mean, it is so rich to be connected with different cultures, different habits, different, I mean, weather experiences. And India has so much to offer. I had the chance to go to south, to north, to many places, more than the half of all your states, actually. So I can also testimony, I can also talk about your country with maybe also a lot of details. I do my best. I also organize conferences now. So actually with our team, we are not doing nothing. We are very much active, I can say proactive, promoting India. And we are also distributing food now all over India, because we feel that it's also a way to feel concerned about the people in India now. And of course, it's difficult in many places with this COVID, but I think we have to be patient. I mean, everything passes. It's about time. It's about also to understand what we can change in our daily life to become more human, more collaborative, I mean, all over the world. So yes, I mean, mainly this is what I wanted to say about my confidence. Let's build the trust together, rebuild, a new normal. I mean, what is normality? This is also a question we can ask ourselves. What is normality? It's maybe about becoming more conscious that what kind of world do we want to build all together? And to travel is important, but the true question is, why do we travel? What do we have to learn from each other? Is it just to go on a beach in Goa and just to enjoy the sun and to have a drink by the ocean sea? I mean, no, I think it's more than that. It's about sharing moments all together. It's about to show to each other the warmth, our human warmth. And on that aspect in India, you are so good and you have so much to teach us about your high sense of hospitality, because also most likely you are a collectivist country and you are helping each other a lot. This is in your nature, this is in your culture. We forgot maybe something on the path, I mean, in the Western countries. Let's face it now. Let's learn and let's evolve also. Let's grow in this direction. So for me, it's just a matter of time now. And about the strategy, I think it's really about to get to know each other better. Let's share our differences. Let's share our cultures, our different cultures, and let's learn about each other. And once we know each other better, we can definitely learn about each other. So for me, it's the strategies. In India, you have everything, no need to change. You have the products to offer, you have the services, but it's now maybe about to communicate more.
Right.
We need to know about what you can offer, how you can offer it, and why you are different from others.
Right.
Because India is definitely very different from any other countries. I mean, you have this potential to gather the people. You have the highest sense of hospitality. And again, I mean, in many countries you will find that, but definitely the warmth, and it's natural within your people to welcome the foreigners with the warmth. So that's it.
Claire.
Sorry, maybe I said
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
And I want to move to Akshita Banyo. Akshita is the director of Bulgaria Palace. She lives in a 200, and when it comes to India, heritage can't be too far away. So she lives in a place which is 200 years old, and she has a passion for the extreme, which is emerging technologies. So therefore, here's a mix of technologies and heritage. So over to you, Akshita. What do you have to say?
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for having me on this very esteemed panel. I feel very lucky and blessed to be part of a panel which has such stalwarts of the industry. And of course, it's a moment of pride because we have our very, very passionate and extremely vivacious Honorable Secretary also as part of the panel. And we have a number of other dignitaries from the state of Odisha. And I would like to start off by thanking them for supporting properties such as ours within Orissa and really be open and inclusive. I'm very, very lucky to be part of, I understand the travel industry has been really hit hard by the pandemic, but there might be very few other states which are still open, which have been checking up on entrepreneurs in the hotel industry who have been open to new ideas. And from past experience, every time we have had an idea and Mr. Dev has been more than kind to listen to it and, collaborate on what may be feasible. So extremely, extremely fortunate to be a young entrepreneur in the state of Orissa. I would like to first say that, this has been extremely, very, very scintillating and extremely insightful. And I'm going to try to be brief and string together a few points. But something I want to start off is by introducing the idea of the Belgaria Palace. Apart from it being my home and my ancestral home, it is a 200-year-old boutique property. But the idea to start Belgaria was not to sell rooms. The idea to start Belgaria was an experiment to see whether travel could actually catalyze sustainable change. So when we started, what we did was put the community at the center of the project. So the idea was when people come, a percentage of funds from guests go back to supporting local self-help groups, NGOs, and community initiatives, mostly led by local Adivasi women. The second point was, can we form a kind of link in chain whereby we remove the middleman, and when guests come, they can actually invest in our district of Mayurbhanj, the largest district of Orissa, where Belgaria is situated. So when guests come, we actually take them to self-help groups, to NGOs, to handicraft, handloom, to artisan villages, which are, endangered, I would call it. And we actually have guests, whether they want to invest in that idea, whether they want to buy products in bulk, whether they would like to skill or mentor these women and men. Apart from that, a third thing was to make sure that, with this unique idea we had, how can Belgaria function more as a platform than a property? So I understand that a lot of people might think that technology and historic properties are two very separate, on two separate platforms. But to be honest, in a state of Orissa, they are not. I work in my sector is artificial intelligence. And one of the states we work in, AI for social good, it's called the Vadwani Research Institute. And we actually work with Orissa. So Orissa has a fantastic multi-stakeholder engagement. So when something happens in our state, it's very easy for a number of different sectors to get involved. And this is one of our unique points when you are a property in Orissa. You get to be technologically advanced and showcase what historic properties look like. Of course, there are challenges to this, but I'd like to begin by expressing really deeply the fact that when we decided to restore a 200-year-old palace, we really took care in making sure what did the local community want. And over here, I'm going to spend a minute. India has a lot to offer, but something that I feel can be given a lot more of a platform is the fact that we know Adivasis and the indigenous community of India. When we say the word Adivasi, in Mayurbhanj, we have 30 different kinds of tribes. Which one are you referring to? Is it Santhal, Ho, Munda, Bhumij, Mandakia? There are a number of others. There are over 30 different kinds of tribes. Each of them have their own language, cuisine, culture, sense of dress, sense of art form. And a lot of them have been left out in the conversation or been sort of the, this village tour. But at the same time, we need to make sure that our local community feels part of the tourism and travel industry. They are not the byproduct of tourists coming and watching them. They are the reason that we have such a rich cultural heritage. And my family personally has indigenous roots, but at the same time, we need to make sure that community development, women and are at the center of this. It needs to be inclusive. heritage properties and historic properties have throughout history been at the center of communities. They were used as a means for royal families to actually incur livelihoods and make sure that infrastructure, when it was being built, would employ people. We want to make sure we employ people and we are still sustainable. One of the biggest things of Belgaria was that we wanted to reduce our carbon footprint. So actually, right before the pandemic, we know we're a disaster-prone area. So we invested in architecture that could survive disasters. We have been here for 200 years. We will be here for the next 200. Fortunately, I am a hotelier who lives in the property that my guests are. I don't stay in a city abroad. I work remotely. And I'm here for the guests, whether there's a cyclone or whether there's a pandemic. And the great thing about that is when you think of yourself as a startup, you are very quick on your feet. You're able to be nimble. You're able to mold the property as it should be. And the second thing I want to talk about is, the fact that we need this, we still don't need this digital revolution. We need help in mentoring, in skilling. We need funding. I think India has a little too much of a good thing. So we have so many historic properties, we have so many ruins, but in each state, there has been the golden triangle. The one rehearsed circuit, which has been, infrastructure is good, maybe we're comfortable with it, but it's going to reach a point of saturation. And I would like to talk about the fact that what we're really talking about here is, inclusivity, uniqueness, authenticity, but that all comes from hyper-localization. We hire locally, we source locally, we have a very strict sustainability pointers, which means that every product in the house, the artisans who have worked on restoring this house have all been locally or regionally sourced. We want to make sure that this is a home built by Orias, for Orias, to the world, with a global appeal and a global audience. But at the same time, we really need to understand artificial intelligence and IoT. We need to digitize. Something we are doing is working on a beta version of an app. So as soon as the guest comes in, from the time that they're looking at booking a tour, traveling different circuits, everything is a one-stop app. To them, even ordering room amenities, to them wanting to book a certain room in the palace for their leisure, whether that's a billiards room or the theater room or the library. This is all done digitization. India, we may have a few lagging behind development indicators, but we have a huge set of data. No one in my staff has their first language is English. No one in the house, our first language is English. But at the same time, we have never had a problem communicating to a global audience. We even have downloaded translation apps in case we miss something in communication. So we need to really think outside the box. How are we using the right kind of apps, the right kind of startups? And that's where we would need public-private partnerships to really get heritage properties, boutique properties, looking at people like us. We need people we need Airbnb, whether that's Oyo, whether that's home delivery apps, things that are happening in small towns like where I'm from, which is Baripada. So if someone doesn't want a meal from the palace, we immediately have an app called Hungry Tins, which gets us a local housewife or someone's grandmother or someone who's cooking a homemade meal for us, which we serve the guests. So as long as we can have this kind of digitization, use of apps, we may not be digitally very friendly yet, but there is a lot of hunger for that. A second thing I want to talk about is, within historic properties, there has to be this idea of deconstruction. Historic properties have been seen as sort of aspirational and exclusive. But for example, as soon as COVID hit, a lot of students had come back to the small town from us. Small town, but the size of Kuwait or Nevada for our global audience. And so, when we had all these young engineers and IT students back, we opened up one part of the palace to be a co-working space. We opened up one part of the palace, which now we will be launching it soon to become a local cafe. This idea that we have to depend on the foreign currency brought on by inbound tourists is completely being destroyed by the fact that tier 2, tier 3 cities also have the spending capacity and the latent travel demand to want to go stay outside. We have buses, railways, the infrastructure needs to obviously match up to a certain level, but conscious luxury, affordable luxury, and purposeful, authentic community building. We have to stop thinking of the fact that we had Sharath on, and I really liked her take on authentic storytelling, content-driven storytelling. So when we scale and we hire your local guides, they are boys and girls who grew up here. They're villagers who have lived here throughout history, who may have worked with the family in some aspect. So it's really authentic storytelling, and we need media attention and focus. We need good content. Everyone has a social media. Everyone is a journalist now. And so we need to make sure that the kind of authentic storytelling makes us unique. It showcases us in a light. something I've always thought is, whenever we have these, sometimes we say that this is going to be the next Switzerland, this is the next Goa, but this is Orissa, and we are unique in ourselves. No one can match up to what we do. And so finally, I think Odias, I have seen that within Orissa, the pride of Odias, I've seen it spreading to our neighboring states. Thomas Zakaria, and I was in Bombay when Bombay Canteen all over Bandra, South Bombay, were talking about the fantastic Odia cuisine. And, Mr. Brar, I had actually messaged you a couple of months ago because you had made Muri Mangso, and you said it's from the eastern region. And I messaged you saying, sir, it's from Mayurbhanj. It's our delicacy. It has been made in the courts from the Mauryan kings. So we are very, very much passionate about who we are, how we are told, and what our narrative is. We will be changing the state paradigm and narrative of the East. And my last thing would be, of course, though, it would be, with all due respect, there are challenges. So we still do need that support, that funding. We are moving into agri-tech. So we are trying to make our whole property, instead of aesthetically palace-pleasing like the Versailles and the Monaco that used to be, it's going to be farm to table. So we want to make sure we can invest in solar panels, we can invest in hydroponics, we can invest in agri-tech. For that, I think it's a beautiful time for states and local private investors. Tourism is a great long-term plan for seeing a huge investment. And this is a great time to invest in these historic community-driven engagement properties and really boost them to scale it up. We have 275 to 300 properties and palaces, forts of different kinds of discrepancies, but all are valid, very, very, they already have an authentic trust built in the community about them. They have historic diplomatic relations that can be revived. We need to look within India about where, because if we don't say, these are almost living museums. They tell stories of communities that go far beyond what we can do on social media. So, for example, we would love to be able to restore our property that you can walk through and have a VR experience of what it was like when the kings of Mayurbhanj walked down the same hallways as you do. We have Haripur, which is from the 14th century, where we fought the Mughals, and is inscribed in Akbar's biography, the Akbarnama. We would love to show you what the battle looked like when Ashoka. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going over time, but thank you so much.
We'll come back on that. Thank you, Akshita. And we actually have an academic on the panel with 27 years experience. He's been in India, China, Mexico. Nimit here has authored 8 books, written 120 papers. But before I move on to it, Namita, you mentioned about skilling, and I must add here, even for Professor Namit Chaudhary, I read this somewhere, human life has become a smartphone. You have to frequently upgrade the device and download a new version of the OS. So over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Ashish. And good evening, everyone. And, all my fellow panelists, audiences. And before anything else, let me wish you everyone on the occasion of World Tourism Day. In my opening remark, let me make a few points. And as a teacher, part of my job is to keep people motivated, encouraged, pepped up. And so I thought I'll start on a positive note. And this is something that I've been telling my audiences over the last couple of weeks, couple of months, that COVID did what we always wanted to do, but we couldn't do because we did not have enough courage to do that. COVID has reset so many things that we wanted to. So our mountains are cleaner, our rivers are cleaner, our beaches are cleaner, our railway stations are cleaner, our cities are cleaner. Our air is clean, and in all, the Swachh Bharat mission is almost half accomplished. Namami Gange is almost there. So that is one of the positives that we should take from this COVID. The other day I was accompanying the ex-Secretary Tourism Government of India, and we were discussing, and he said that we need to understand this, that there are 8, 9, 10 states which are really hit bad by this COVID. All other states are doing pretty well. Some of our Indian states are, doing much better than many of the European states. And therefore, we need to understand that one of the challenges that we face is the perception. We're looking India as one single block, but then that's how the world is going to look at it. So it's all a battle of perception. It's a mind game, and we need to play our cards smartly. The other thing that we need to understand is that the world has changed. Once we are on the other side of this pandemic, we'll realize that the world has already changed, and it has changed for always. It's changed perceptions, it's a newfound skepticism, it's new innovations, it's new expectations, it's new demand, it's going to be new markets, and therefore we need to have new products, new protocols, new technologies. So these are some of the things that we'll have to work on, but we need not change everything in one go, and that to full steam. What I want to say is that what I analyze is that our response to this pandemic has been very, very tactical. A problem comes up, we come up with we do experiment, we benchmark what people around the world have been doing, and then we try to do everything in one go. We try to do almost everything that we get to know. My suggestion to begin with would be that we need to set our priorities right. We cannot be investing effort and resources in anything and everything that comes our way. Let us, segregate our priorities. Most of the speakers before me on this panel came up with so many ideas, and I appreciate most of those ideas. But let us understand that some of these interventions are of qualifying nature. They are just the qualifier, they're the bare essentials which must be there. They should be performed at a minimal level. Why I'm saying this is because if we are not performing to that optimal level, our customer, our traveler is going to be dissatisfied, is going to be more skeptical. But if we overdo, this does not return additional value to our investments. And that is a challenge which we need to understand. Things like health and hygiene protocols, technology, digitization, safety, security, they are all very important. But overdoing them won't take us anywhere. On the other hand, we need to understand that there are interventions, there are creative ideas which I refer to them as the vantage factors, which are going to land us in a position of advantage. Their absence may not dissatisfy the customer, but their being part of the offer is going to hugely excite them. As I often tell my audiences, that give customer a reason to buy. Almost all destinations around the world are hit by this pandemic. Everyone is rearing to rebound. It's going to be a much more competitive world because everyone would try to come back as quickly as possible. And therefore, one of the saviors would be those things which help us differentiate, which help our customers take decision in our favor, choose us as compared to the competition. So that is where our destination should focus. Our destination should, look. I mean, I agree with what Akshita said just a few minutes back, that we should look back at our personalities, the personalities of the places. We need to understand that these places are no more physical spaces. Every destination is a creative narrative. So for me, one of the things that the states must be doing is build narratives. A glamping event or Orissa by road are creative ways to build narratives. So most of the all destinations in India should try to build these narratives. So these were some of the things that I wanted to point out as a part of my opening remark. I'll get back to other points.
Thank you, Professor. And I'm going to eat a bit into the audience question time and throw a question to Deepak Deva about how he sees quickly the contours of the new Incredible India 2. And after that, I want Anil Chadha to come in. And Anil, one policy reform you would like to see happen? Because somebody in the corporate world told me that COVID actually has turned out to be the chief transformation officer. It has helped us change many policies, which Professor just mentioned in many ways. But over to you, Deepak, on the overseas campaign and what you have in mind.
Ashish, thanks. So we were, while I hear everybody talking about domestic tourism, and that is absolutely right, at some stage, we need to get our act together also about bringing people back to India. So, in early 2000, Amitabh Kant, one of our brightest bureaucrats, on the back of God's own country, started the Incredible India journey for Tourism India. In and around 2015, I would say one of the brightest minds in tourism, Suman Birla, who's currently at the UNWTO, took Incredible India to great heights in digital content and used social media as a key promoting tool. He got it spot on. I call his phase as Incredible India 2.0. Now we are entering into a very different phase, and we need to have a strategy on how we will exit this virus, as it may have some of the old spices. We have to have a strategy on how we will exit, as it may have some of the old spices, but we need to find some new ingredients and rewrite the recipe. That's for my friend, the chef on the panel today. Ranveer, from Mr. Chef Barar. We must plan the Operation Incredible India Restart campaign in detail, so that as soon as we see the first signs of ground conditions normalizing, we trigger an extremely aggressive marketing campaign and attract the end consumer. We must focus on our key markets. We've spoken about them earlier: UK, Germany, France, Russia. And we must create tourism confidence building measures and communicate safe standards, as India needs to showcase that we are ready, have to put global best practices and higher standards in place. We have to communicate this. There is no second chance, as every destination is gearing up and taking away customers. The government needs to start thinking about how getting a share of that wallet of international tourists, and how and where we will spend every precious dollar for revival, be it through social media, digital media, or print. The question we have to ask is, are our tourism offices in international markets really effective and up to this cause? In my opinion, they are an outdated idea. Something that worked in the 80s and the 90s, where information was not easily available. We are fighting today's battles with yesterday's weapons. What we are missing desperately are local PR agencies in key source markets. These PR agencies can manage the sound bites and can cover positive news as well as manage the not so positive ones. And most important, I am a strong believer of this: we must involve our ambassadors in each of our embassies and make tourism one of their KRAs. Tourism is a commercial activity. It's another form of trade. Each ambassador has to be responsible for growth of tourism from their country. Everyone has to come to the party now. Like I said, there will be no second chance, and the Ministry of Tourism has to get it right.
Right. Thank you, Deepak. And Anil, of course, one change you would like to see, but after that, I want to prepare Anita to be ready to be able to give an overview to what Deepak said and what Anil is going to wish for from a global perspective. But go on, Anil. Anil, your audio is.
So it's not really a change as a policy change, but I would like to continue with where Mr. Deepak Deva left. What the country really would need is a revival phase. There's so much of work which is being done right now to win the customer confidence back, and you will see that when you travel and when you visit various destinations, then you will see what various states which we already spoke about. But when you speak about the government per se, I think what is really important is to, when the reboot or the restart button, it has to focus completely on a brand called India. You will have to win the confidence back in the international markets, and this is the best opportunity. What you lost is what you can gain now. Remember, the India is a vast, very vast country of very rich experiences. This entire journey of, so I look at travelers of for two purposes. You would travel here for business, or you would travel here for leisure. Now, the business would come back, whether it's today, tomorrow, or the day after. People would have to come back and conduct their businesses. But to win the tourists back, you see how the occupancies are scaling up in other countries now. Europe is bouncing back pretty strong. Their average room rates are not falling they're not going down south the way they are in other countries. So how do you take this entire campaign? And as I mentioned in my initial remarks also, that it is just not incredible India. It is, you have to add the word called safety. You have to add the word called trust. You have to win them back. This needs a very, very massive effort to bring people back. And it again will go back to a public-private partnership. It cannot be done alone by one segment of hotels or restaurants or tour operators, or it is a combination. It is something what Dubai does as a shopping festival, or what Singapore does as the Great Singapore Sale, or the various events that they plan. If you go to Singapore as a tourist, you will see their map for the entire year. Every month there is an activity which drives people back to that country. And this is the time to, go back to the drawing board, invest everything that you have to bring people back. And that's what I feel is going to be the real big need of the hour.
Thank you, Anil. And I'm sure, Anita, you have great food for thought. And I don't mean the food way as chef as I'm, but go on.
I must say, I'm very pleased when Ranveer spoke that he didn't get into cuisine, because I'm starving. It's very quickly. And I must say as well, Deepak, thank you. As you were speaking, I was so touched by what you said about Suman Villa. I took a photograph of you and I sent it to him on WhatsApp so that he could know that you spoke so lovingly. I'm grateful for this chance to say something about this whole issue of international, because this is absolutely critical. We know that the international market is not just important in terms of yield, but in terms of destination reputation. And so that is critical. And Deepak is absolutely right. We need to keep the communication with the international market going. Now is not a time for campaigning, it's a time for communicating. Because travelers, we talk about them, we are them. We have all been locked in for 6-7 months. We're all missing it. And what now, going into my CNN role, what I can tell you confidently from my CNN client side, they have never seen as much traffic on CNN.com, non-COVID content, but CNN travel as this year. Because by being physically locked up, people are using the travel sector as a way of escaping, a way of breaking the psychological lock-ins, not just the physical lock-ins. The dreaming stage is longer. But when people can travel again, they know where they want to go. So keeping that dreaming going is absolutely vital. When people start traveling, they're going to go heart before holiday, because people are missing those loved ones, but there's no reason they can't meet those loved ones somewhere else. What's also critical about domestic tourism is that it's a very smart government strategy. Like I said, it's about supply chains, but it also demonstrates demand. That demand is going to be vital for the international airline community to identify where are the valuable routes, where is the demand that's going to be sustainable, where will the profitability come back. So that international audience cannot be silent. India cannot not talk to them. We're talking in a different way, but when the decision-making process happens, we need to make sure that India is top of the list. So what Deepak says is absolutely right, because once borders open, the demand is going to be so high for audience appeal. If we don't start the conversations now, it's going to be very noisy. And it's the audience desire and envy that generates even more domestic appeal, because suddenly people in beautiful, incredible India will think, the world is now interested in visiting my home, but they can't yet, but I can. So it's human nature. And that's where, for all of the science and the strategy behind tourism, we must not forget the human component of that dream destination that India is for a lot of Indians. But we need to make sure that whether it's domestic markets or international, the visitor feels as valued as the place to be visited. That is vital, and that will build the trust and the confidence. Because as I always say, when we look at it, it is not someone's home that creates safety because, Ashish, you have all of these great sanitizers in place. It's you reassuring me that I will take care of you when you visit that makes me feel confident in visiting your home. All of these things need to be considered, but the international market is as critical, not just for yield, but for reputation that will have a rub off domestically and internationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. And before we wrap up, quickly to you, Ranveer, somebody sent a question about Orissa cuisine you talked about once on a panel. He apparently has become a fan of yours. One liner there.
No, I'm looking forward to, I'm also like everybody else. I've emptied out whatever I had inside. I'm looking forward for a refill, and that's my next destination to sort of get lost for 3 weeks and come out. I honestly believe that that a lot of our country is still undiscovered when it comes to cuisine, because inherently good cooks aren't great marketeers. Uh, so I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to refueling my tank in Orissa next couple of weeks, very soon.
Well, thank you, Ranveer. One last line, Lakshmi, since you are back, how will you build your communication strategy around what Deepak and Anil said? One liner, if you were India's communication strategy specialist in the overseas market.
Well, I'm just working on, I missed most of what Deepak said. I came in the middle of it, but I'm working on 100 stories of India from my experiences. And it's a mix of cuisine, food, heritage, positive stories, people stories, because like I said, I feel people make places, and it's already underway, the 100 stories of India that I've been working on. And I do hope that, I would be sharing that along with stories of positivity, stories of change makers, stories of innovators, and stories, of course, which says that it's safe to travel in India soon.
Thank you, Lakshmi, and thank you, my panelists. I'm going to pass you to Deeksha now, but I have to add here that when I was asked by FICCI, and I thank FICCI for getting me to moderate that, I was wondering, what will I get you guys engaged for 1.5 hours? But let me tell you, I think I personally enjoyed, and I hardly felt the 1.5 hours go by. Of course, with some, like I said, nice cuisine thrown in as well with it. But over to you, Deeksha.
Anish, just before Deeksha comes in, can I just have one line?
Yes, please.
This is in response to Ranveer's comment. I just want to share that at least a lot of people in Delhi are actually driving out and trying to find a good place to eat and come back. I think that's actually, otherwise they're just driving to nowhere and coming back, but they're looking for good places to eat and really come back. So I just wanted to share that thought with Ranveer.
Right.
I think it's a cue, Chadda Saab, it's a cue for you.
Yeah, I mean, before he comes in, one liner for Mr. Vishal Dev. I think he's wanting to say something. I just get that sense.
Look, I'm good. I've been hearing to all the suggestions that have been made. It's a lot of gyan, and we will definitely take up on the suggestions that have been made. Ranveer mentioned that he would like to come to Odisha. It will be a pleasure to collaborate with you. We're looking forward to working with you and other chefs. We did have a webinar on Odia cuisine. Sometime back, we had Ajesh Sahu and Sabyasachi Gorai join us. They're very excited about promoting Odia cuisine as well. And of course, an invitation to everyone else to visit our state. It's a beautiful state, a lot of places to be discovered. We'll be waiting for your ride.
Well, I love the chilka prawns personally, whenever I've been there, of course. But over to you, Deeksha.
Well, thank you to the entire panel. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. That was, I think, a very fruitful discussion. And like you said, time just passed. Very valid points were raised, valuable suggestions, inputs have come forward. For the road ahead for the sector, just to mention, it's going to be long and bumpy, but then hasn't the journey always been more interesting and important than the destination? So even if you smile, I think it's hidden behind your mask. Remember, laugh lines also appear around your eyes. So on that note, could I request the Director and Additional Secretary Tourism, Government of Odisha, Shri Sachin Ramachandra Jadhav, to present the vote of thanks. Again, a very dynamic officer of the Odisha Tourism Department. He puts in incredible energy into everything he takes up and feels extremely passionate about innovative ideas and projects that can make a difference. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Diksha. Thanks for the kind words. I hope I am audible.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now, this has been an extremely stimulating session, 1.5 hours. I was indeed looking forward to this kind of session, but not expecting this whole galaxy of speakers talking about various points, and hardly there was repetition of anybody. So, before extending my formal vote of thanks, I would like to sum up what has been discussed. We started with the Commissioner cum Secretary, Government of Odisha, on opening this whole session on a very positive and optimistic note, and rightly so, because he's on the right side of the table, making policies on the side of the government, and definitely government is thinking positive about the recovery and reboot of the tourism sector, and he highlighted the steps being taken by government of Odisha in revival of tourism. While our next speaker, co-chairman FICCI Tourism Committee and co-founder and CEO Yatra Online, Mr. Dhruv Singhi, he started on a very cautious note, although not pessimistic, and he introduced some provocative ideas. Like he has underlined that regionalized tourism will have to be focused on, and it will again pose new challenges. Promotion of local places, engaging with local authorities, that has to be looked into now. And herein he has highlighted the role of the state governments also in promoting these things. Domestic inbound tourism will have a long recovery cycle that he has stressed, and almost every speaker, every panelist has further agreed to those things. And he and Mr. Deepak Deva, they have agreed on one line that not before 2022 we are going to have a recovery cycle as far as domestic inbound tourism is concerned. But many other panelists have agreed that India has a lot of potential of in-house tourists, and like Europe and like China, we can see a good recovery and early recovery as far as hospitality and hotel sector is concerned. In that case, almost all the speakers have stressed the need of the state government to take courageous steps in opening up restaurants, hotels, other chains, and Delhi, example of Delhi was given, wherein the earlier we are opening up the sectors, the earlier we are learning. Our panelists, they have highlighted on certain new practices and trust, communication, and the importance of marketing tourism was highlighted by all our panelists. I will not go what each panelist have said, but noteworthy mention I will make of Ms. Akshita Bhanjdev, who has briefly summarized the experiments they have made in combining heritage, craft, community involvement, which is a model in hospitality that can be emulated in new times, new paradigm. And what our professor from Jamia Millia Islamia Central University, Professor Dr. Nimit Chaudhary, has underlined is that COVID has reset our world, which we all wanted to do but somehow could not do. And this positive aspect, with this positive aspect, we must all go ahead. And what he has further said is very important as far as government is concerned, and I think our secretary also will agree to this, that in our response to the pandemic, we have been tactical. But when we are dealing with the tourism sector and recovery of this tourism sector, we must be strategic also, and we must set our priorities right. And I believe not only Odisha government, but also government of India also understands this particular aspect. And the government will definitely work with this kind of webinar, not only being conducted by FICCI in association with Odisha Tourism, but also by many other states also. And government of India is also having this webinar. This is a testimony to the fact that the government and policymakers in the government, they are listening to the voices in India, outside India, in this sector, and associated sectors also. And I believe this kind of churning, this kind of discussion will definitely show us a new way ahead. With this concluding remarks, I would like to extend my formal vote of thanks to all our esteemed panelists, Ms. Anita Mendirata, Mr. Deepak Deva, Mr. J.K. Mohanty, Mr. Anil Chadha, Master Chef Shri Ranbir Brar, Ms. Lakshmi Sarath, Ms. Claire Matignier, Ms. Akshita Bhanjadev, Professor Dr. Nimit Chaudhary, as well as our esteemed guest, Shri Dhruva Shringi. And my special thanks to our Commissioner cum Secretary, Shri Vishal Kumar Dev, whose idea it was to initiate this dialogue, and the moderator, Mr. Ashish Kumar, for an excellent moderation, apart from giving his own witty remarks and moderating this heavily loaded session in such a brief time. And of course, the team FICCI led by Mr. Dilip Chenoy and my friend Manisha Ahuja for coordinating all these things. Our team CSM, Diksha, everybody, I cannot thank you all enough for providing the stimulating thought. And summarizing this and documenting this is going to be a challenge, because there are many new thoughts which will give food for thought for our policymakers. I am sure we will document this entire session properly and present to the government for further processing. Thank you very much. Over to you, Diksha.
Thank you, sir. And that's it. I think we've got the vote of thanks. There's nothing much for me to say. Thank you, everyone. Before you click on the leave meeting button, just stay safe, stay happy, keep smiling. Like I said, you still have the laugh lines around your eyes, so don't worry about the mask. And have a great evening ahead. Thank you, everyone, for making this webinar so successful. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Take care.
Thank you.
Stay
Bye.
safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye. Good evening.